I just took a whole bottle of medicine, whatever I found in the cabinet, and just went to bed. But then 5 years later, my daughter said, Mom, so-and-so sent this money, and they said it's for the limo. I'm like, could you please give that back to them? Teen parents, they will live in poverty for the most part for about 2 decades.
Wow.
I really want young teens to understand, even if they've done this, which again, I will say I do not recommend the path for anyone, that they can make it.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Red Book Podcast, where we delve into fascinating careers and learn the stories behind them. From perseverance to success, I'm your host, Eugene Engelman, and today we have the privilege of meeting and listening to an author and humanitarian, Toni Carter. Toni, welcome.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me today. I'm looking forward to engaging with you and your amazing audience.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Before we delve into Toni's story and learn principles of perseverance and success, let's go to our sponsors.
Hi everyone, my name is Jessica Lanehart. I am the operating partner at Chick-fil-A of Ammon, and I've worked here for 10 years, and I love Chick-fil-A, and I love our community. Here at Chick-fil-A of Ammon, we are really excited to announce a partnership between us and the Red Book Podcast. The Red Book Podcast is a show dedicated to show inspiring stories of perseverance and success of real people here in our community. We believe at Chick-fil-A of Ammon that the Red Book Podcast aligns with our values. So we hope you all tune into the Red Book Podcast with us and watch these inspiring stories of our community, and a word from their sponsor every now and again, because we might offer something fun.
What's up, guys? Before we go back to the podcast, I would like to read to you Toni Carter's bio so that you see the amount of value and experience she's bringing to the table. So here we go. Toni L. Coleman Carter is a dynamic HR director and champion of positive change, known for partnering with executives to create environments empowering and engaging individuals to achieve a competitive advantage. She leverages talent platforms to enhance employee capabilities, develop future leaders, and deliver measurable business results. Carter brings over 20 years of combined leadership and government experience, including serving as deputy mayor for the village of Hanover Park, Illinois. She also dedicated 23 years to corporate America at Motorola Solutions, a leading $12 billion technology company headquartered in Chicago, Illinois. With that, let's go back to the podcast and hear Toni Carter's story. Catch you on the other side. See ya. Welcome back. So, Toni, tell me, what was the moment you realized you wanted to become an author and humanitarian? What was the turning point in your life that spearheaded this path?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because you know how most young people grow up to talk about, oh, I want to be a nurse or a doctor or a fireman or a policeman or an engineer, whatever it is for them. Becoming an author and a humanitarian never even crossed my mind. As a matter of fact, I'm not actually sure what I was thinking at a very young age.
Okay.
But when you talk about becoming an author and a humanitarian, I think both of those things kind of fell into my lap. Now, as I entered probably my early 30s, I knew that I wanted to leave some type of manual for young people.
Okay.
I was a teen mother,
Okay.
and plenty of people have lots of wonderful things to say about teen mothers, and I don't recommend the path for anyone. It's a very, very difficult path to live through, to go through, and actually the latest research I've explored really showed that teen parents, they will live in poverty for the most part for about 2 decades.
Wow.
So of course, I didn't know that when, my situation was going on, but it was pretty tough there for me for a very long time. So as I got into my 30s, I thought, I really want young teens to understand, even if they've done this, which again, I will say, I do not recommend the path for anyone, that they can make it, that life is still possible for them. They are not done. As a matter of fact, God is a God of a second, third, fourth, and fifth chances. And
Exactly.
so I wanted to leave a manual to help the next generation of people. So I started writing and writing and writing and writing and writing and writing and writing. I kid you not, I probably wrote for about 12 years.
That's a lot of writing.
And never produced a book, right? But I just kept writing. And originally, I was going to title my first work, You Can Make It Too.
Okay.
Again, because I was focused on encouraging the next generation of people who might get themselves in situations that seem hopeless. So that's how authorship fell into my lap, wanting to help the next generation of people. And just through my life and career, after I could see headlight, after I could really believe within myself that there was something I had to offer others, then I started to offer that not only through having conversations on different platforms with, groups that I would come in contact with, but then knowing how difficult it is for people who are raised in poverty or underprivileged and underserved circumstances. Whenever I would have any little bit to give, if someone was in need, it was always a goal of mine. So even when I didn't have much, even when I wasn't even done with school, when I probably was making $15 an hour, I was still giving. When people needed, I would make sacrifices to help. And sometimes people think, well, I don't have a lot. I can't really help anybody. You know what? America is one of the richest countries in the world. And even our people in the most dire circumstances have more than a lot of people around the world. So I'm not sure I totally understood that concept at the time that I was really trying to make a difference with the little that I had. But I did know that when people would give me things as I would struggle and when I would need help, even when it was when my younger kids were smaller and maybe I needed Pampers or milk or something like that, it just brought me so much joy to know that someone actually would help me. Now, mind you, when I was having children 40 years ago, and I know you have some younger ones, Pampers were costing $10 a week. And people might think, oh, that's nothing. That's pennies. Yeah, it might have been, but I didn't have it all the time, right? And so when people would give to me and help me, and mainly the people I'm talking about are my relatives, the Hughes family, my grandparents, they helped me a lot. And both of those sets of people are the reason why, one of the main reasons why you see the woman that you see today. So it always made me happy to know that even if this is just a small token and would mean nothing to most people, it means something to them because it meant something to me. So making those little sacrifices is kind of how I started. And then as I continued to grow my career and of course earned more, had more than I gave more. And the one thing I loved about my previous employer is they had a matching giving program. And so when employees like me would give to organizations that of course were 501(c), you had to have some kind of credibility behind the organization that you were running, then they would match your donation.
Oh, wow.
So imagine if you have $50, then they give that organization $50 too. If you give the organization $1,000, they give the organization $1,000. They capped us at $10,000, and I never was able to give $10,000 to one organization within a year. But anything I gave, they totally matched it. And can you imagine how that doubled what people have? Now, I'll shut up in a minute. As you can see, I love to talk, right?
Go on.
But
I love to listen.
When I think about even the Idaho Food Bank here in Idaho Falls, just a little sacrifice, things that we spend lunch money on, can actually sometimes feed a family.
Exactly.
You know, we might think that latte that we're spending $6 or $7 on, and trust me, I hate that because I am a Dunkin' girl. So my lattes really cost about $6. But I know here, you know, when I have to go to Starbucks because there is no Dunkin', I spend like $7.58, and I'm like, oh my God, this is painful. But in some instances, in regards, because nonprofits have a lot of times like extensive networks that will help them, that sometimes gives them breaks. That $7 could probably be a whole meal for a family for a day. So I kind of think like that. And I'm also very cautious and careful with the way I spend my money because I'm always thinking, do you really need that, Toni? And what could that do for someone else? So I know that was a long answer to just say in a nutshell. It wasn't intentional. It fell in my lap. The more God blessed me, the more I thought about other people. And I just continue to do what I do with what I have. And as long as He continues to bless me and give to me, I will continue to bless others and help them.
Amazing. I picked some nuggets, some gold nuggets from it. The first thing I picked was writing. That is not giving up, not giving up, not giving up.
Yeah.
And then seeing how much people gave to you, blessing your life, in turn turned you over to give to other people. And you know what's interesting? As you mentioned that, I would like to share this experience on camera, but I met you a few years ago when I was in grad school, and I was looking for someone to connect, and there was this connection made. And Toni took me out to a restaurant and just had this sweet spirit around her. Just got to know me, asked how school was going, and I would say that's almost 10 years ago. It stuck with me. So thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And what's so funny about that story is you didn't remind me of that until like last year, some point. It may have been even earlier this year
Earlier
when
this
we
year,
talked.
yeah.
And it's so funny because as I was leaving work today and I was telling one of our colleagues what I was doing this afternoon, I said, you know what's so interesting is Eugene reminded me that, you know, at some point we had this encounter. I took him out to lunch. I didn't even remember the experience until you shared it with me because honestly, when I do things for people, I do things and I move on. You know, it's not like you owe me lunch because I bought you lunch 10
Exactly.
years ago or 8 years ago. I'm going on 9 years with our corporation this August, right? But I don't even think of things like that. When I do stuff for people, I'm done, right? Other thing I'll say about that is I'm also very cautious with my money. And sometimes when people know that I will help them, I will make a sacrifice, they sometimes will say, oh, can I borrow this or can I borrow that? But because I care about people so much, I will never give you more than I can afford to lose because I know that if you don't give it back to me, then I don't want any hard feelings. I don't want the relationship hampered. So a lot of times I will only give people, you know, what I can afford to lose. And I'm very, very cognizant of that. So I give it away. Don't think anything of it. Interestingly enough, about 5 years ago, I got $75 from one of my children's former classmates because at the time when they were getting ready to go to prom, you know, I sprung for the limo for them. It was two of them sharing it with their guests, and we were supposed to split the cost, the parents. Well, other parents never gave me the money, right? But then 5 years later, my daughter said, Mom, so-and-so sent this money, and they said it's for the limo. I'm like, could you please give that back to them? I had told, she was like, Mom, it's very important to her that you keep this money. And I'm like, you know what? If she remembered all these years later, my daughter graduated from high school in 2005.
Wow.
So I'm like, okay, let me just keep it and keep it going. But that's kind of like who I am.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Can you share a time when you felt like giving up,
Yeah.
but decided you wanted to keep going?
Yeah, I wish there was only one time that I felt like giving up.
Okay, let's go.
I've had a number of life experiences that have caused me to feel like, is it really worth it? You know, this is way too much. This is difficult. I was actually talking to one of our amazing colleagues today, and it's so interesting that I didn't realize that he lost one of his children last year. They decided to end their life, and there were no symptoms, no signs, and when he shared this with me, and we've been talking for a long time, but I was like, I had no idea. And I shared an experience with him. But before he left, I said, you know what? It really wouldn't be authentic of me if I didn't share with you that when I was 14, because his son was 16 when he decided to leave, that, I did a similar thing. And I said, for me, I wasn't even thinking about who would find me, how they would find me. I was just like, life is just not going well. I just really don't want to be here. So I just took a whole bottle of medicine, whatever I found in the cabinet, and just went to bed. And one of my brothers came in and found the bottle on the floor, of course, summons my mother, who, rushes me to the hospital. They pump my stomach. And of course, you can see I'm still here today, right?
Exactly.
But I actually remember waking up in the hospital thinking, why am I still here? Why didn't they just let me go? I mean, life was, from my 14-year-old viewpoint at that time, just that bad that I didn't really want to be here, right? So that was a major crisis for me as a teenager. And then as I continued to grow, then having those children as a teen mother, and then, still having to go to school and people talking about you, having all kind of things to say. They don't really know what's going on with you, but they're creating their own stories. And then parents don't want their children hanging around with you because somehow your pregnancy will rub off on them. I guess they don't really understand how babies are made. But then that just continued exclusion piece just made life even more difficult for me. But interestingly enough, when I was about 18 years old, a special lady stopped by to see my mother for whatever reason, and I heard this conversation going on in the living room. And so, to make a long story short, I was thinking, now I know my mother cannot stand this lady. Why is she in our house, right? Because at that point, I was going backwards and forth between Mississippi and Louisiana, between my grandparents and my mother, because that's what I did from the time I was born, right? But this time, I'm like, what's going on here, right? So I eased out to the living room, and Miss Barnes was out there. I think at the time her name was Fleming. And I just eased on the sofa, and I'm just kind of, just easing, listening, because I'm like shocked, because I know my mother absolutely hates this lady, right? I've heard the conversations, okay? So eventually, the lady starts talking to me, and she said, Toni, blah, 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 blah. So I answered whatever she asked. And then she said, why don't you come and go to church with me this weekend?
Okay.
And I said, okay, I'll go, right? And my mama said, but before I said that, Eugene, she said, let me watch her tell this lie. Because I was not a big fan of church, I was just not a big fan. But honestly, seeing that lady in our house, my mother talking to her, I'm just floored, right? So to make a long story short, she started investing in my life, and is another one of the main reasons why I'm here today. Now, what was your question? Because I done went on a whole...
Oh, you answered to the question. It was, can you share a time when you felt like giving up, but didn't give up? That was a very beautiful
But let
answer.
me just go on for 30 more seconds, because I knew it was going somewhere.
Yes,
that wasn't the only time. And then that lady started to give me hope, right? Now, there were still many, many struggles after that, because I met her when I was 18, and she kept imparting to me. And by my 19th birthday, I was ready to make a change. I'm like, you know what? This is just not the kind of life I really want to live for the rest of my life. I got back in school, started working, just making some real life changes there. But it was still tough, even when I left Louisiana, because even after I met her, at some point I went back to Louisiana from Mississippi, because there's nothing going on in my hometown. It's a small town. There's just nothing happening there. So I went back to Louisiana, outside the New Orleans area, and that's where I started to build, my life. And when I got married, I was 21, would have been probably 22 that summer. We went up to Chicago, and because we had very little, Chicago's kind of expensive, especially when you're coming from, the areas that we came from. So it was really tough for about the first, I'm going to say 2 or 3 years of us being there.
Okay.
And then when I continued my college education, because we only had one car for some time, there were some times, because my husband worked about 30 minutes from where we lived. I'd get to work, and then if I had to go to school, then I would walk, which wasn't too far from my office, maybe 2 or 3 miles. And then when it was snowing out there, it was raining, I still had to get to school. And one of my colleagues in particular would pick me up, and if she saw me walking, and drop me off. But there have been many, many times when I've wanted to quit and when I've wanted to give up. But what I can say to people is times are hard, but if you just keep pressing and keep trying, they do get better. Work will pay off, but I cannot promise you that it won't be some dark days in between that. But that was only a couple of times. I could probably go through 10 or 15 more times. But just know life has not been easy for me. I know some people look at me and they think this, they think that. I mean, you can just imagine some of the things I've heard people say, and I'm like, you have no idea. You have no clue what I've been through. You have no idea the hard times I've had, but you're making these kinds of statements, but I don't entertain them. I just keep it moving. But I can tell, I've wanted to quit a lot, but I'm grateful that I'm still here.
I'm grateful you're here too.
Thank you.
I'm grateful you didn't quit and you kept on going. I'm grateful we're having this conversation. Your story is fascinating, and there's so much we can learn. Don't give up. There'll be darker days, but you'll get through them. Toni, how do you personally define perseverance, and how has that definition evolved throughout your life?
Yeah, I think our conversation already have demonstrated some of that perseverance, right? From my perspective, it's just never giving up and continuing, even when the odds and the obstacles seem like they're against you. At some point, you'll meet someone who will help you. A lot of times you may hear a lot of no's, and I've had a lot of no's in my life, but all it takes is one yes to change it. And so I just keep looking for that yes. And I just really don't easily give up. And sometimes when things get difficult and hard, I may step away from it. Sometimes people think, oh, okay, she's done. I'm so through with her. Mm-hmm. Then I'll come back.
Oh, she just took a break. She's back.
Yeah, I'll come back. Maybe the timing wasn't right. Maybe it wasn't, a good moment for you or whatever. But if I feel like something is real important, I'll stick with it until it happens, or until I see, you know what, this just isn't worth it. Move on to something else. But there have been very few times in my life when I've taken that approach, because most of the things I get behind and get interested in, I'm real passionate about. And passion is the unstoppable force. Now, that's not my quote, that's somebody else's, but I believe holistically in it. When you talk about success, for me, success is what you make it, and it took me a long time to get to this point, because I'm gonna tell you, my grandmother had a lot of expectations for me. Even when I was that teen pregnant mother, even when people were talking about me like a dog, she cared about none of that. She's like, Toni, you will go to school, you will do this. I'm like, oh wow. My goodness. I mean, she put the right amount of pressure on me to get the result that we kind of see today. But I had her for 40 years of my life, right? Okay. And when she passed away in 2010, I was sad. I was heartbroken. I thought I would still have a lot more time with her than I did. She was 84.
Wow.
But when she passed away and I could get through the grief and the sorrow piece of it, then I felt like this weight lift off me. Because now I don't have to live up to anybody's expectations. I can do whatever I want to do.
And those were good expectations.
They were. I agree with you. They were. But looking back on it, after she passed away, it was a certain amount of pressure. And I didn't even realize at the time that what I was experiencing was pressure. But anytime you're thinking about, okay, if I don't do this, grandma's going to be upset. I better get with it. But now, there was one time I defied my grandmother for sure. And I'm talking about as an adult. Now, as a kid, kids be kids. We defy folks all the time, right? But I remember when I decided to go back to school. Okay. And it was taking me when Candace and John, those are my older two kids' names, when I first went back to college, they were in elementary school. Now, I only went on Saturday morning, because, I needed to do what I thought was important during the week for them. But as they aged, then I took on more classes and went 2 nights a week, and then it became 3 nights a week, right? But then it became night classes, and it wasn't Saturday classes because they didn't offer what I needed at those times. Okay. And she said to me, Toni, Your time for college was before you had those kids. You need to be at home. Now, that pierced my heart like never before because I didn't want to hear those words, right? But I can understand where she was coming from. And she made a lot of sacrifices for me and my brother, who she helped raise in her, you know, in her mature days. But I could see then. She was always able to see far ahead of me up until that point. But at that point, I'm like, Grandma, now this time you don't know what you're talking about. So I'm going to have to keep going, right? And she was very proud of me when I graduated. She was very proud of me when I got my master's degree. But there was a time when she felt like going to school 2 and 3 nights a week, you need to be at home with your kids, right? And I'm like, I'm going to have to defy you this time, right? Because this is temporary. I need to get through this. And the other thing is I needed to set an example for my children, right? Now, my dad went to college. But he passed away when I was 7. He went into the hospital to have his tonsils taken out. They gave him the wrong anesthesia. He never woke up, right? So the model that I would have had with someone who had been down that path was gone. My mother's a cosmetologist by trade, right? But I wanted to set that example for my kids, and I wanted them to know that you can make it too. You can do it. And they both have gone to college.
That's amazing.
And I've got one more who's 14 that I got to get through there. But yeah, very, very interesting.
That's amazing. I picked up something, and correct me if I'm saying it right, that it's good to have the right amount of pressure.
Yeah.
Even during those times, you still have to look out for yourself. You still have to be able to say, this isn't going to work for me at this time. I know you're doing it with good intent, Grandma, but at this point, looking at circumstances, it's good that I continue and see where you are now. And Grandma was proud of you.
She was proud.
Amazing. You seem to be answering all my questions. I don't even say it and it's just going. That's how amazing you are.
Thank you.
Okay. This is one that hit me. In a world where there's so much noise and short attention spans, how do you ensure that your work continues to make a meaningful impact? Oh, and before that, we need to talk about your book so you can bring everything in. Did you finish writing the book? What was it called? And
so it evolved from from You Can Make It Too to something more holistic, because then I brought in a creative writing group to help me finish it. After 12 years, you just do not have the competencies to do it by yourself, right? So roundtable companies out of, I want to say, Skokie, Illinois, came in. They helped me finish the project. They took what I had. They tore it apart.
oh, boy.
And part of it was, my executive editor, Katie, was like, I know you have this idea of this one segment of people that you want to help, but your life is broader than that. And Toni, you're going to have to create something that's more comprehensive and more holistic. And then she started to ask me all these deep questions, which is why I'm so comfortable today with talking about, my attempt at, taking my life, my teen pregnancy, because a lot of those things I kind of hid. When I'm up in Chicago, no one knows I'm a teen mother. They had no idea. When I went there, I had a family, I had gotten married. This is just the American way, and so I was able to hide that for, once I left Mississippi, Louisiana, they didn't know me, so I could just come and create a new person, right? But I finally got it out. But Katie said to me one day in her interviewing process, and she could detect that I was very uncomfortable with talking about certain things. And she said, you know what, Toni? You got to get beyond this, because your audience is going to detect that you're trying to hide something from them. And once they detect that, they're going to disconnect from you. So I need you to go off and think about this, and we need to pick up this conversation when we talk next week, because we had weekly meetings as we got through this process. So yeah, When Trouble Finds You is out there. You can buy it on Amazon, Books and Noble, anywhere you really can buy books. It's available. And I'm glad Katie pressed me today, because even in talking about my suicide attempt, even with talking about my teen pregnancy, the abuse that I suffered, the childhood trauma, the domestic violence situations, you would just be amazed at how many people write me, contact me, call me, email me, and are so grateful that I've shared my story. And it's so interesting that at the time I released that book, I was on a church leadership team, and we probably had a staff of maybe 10 or 12,
Okay.
elders and their wives or whatever, more than half of them had been through similar circumstances that they had never shared with anybody before. And so can you imagine like that duplication of that with them even getting more comfortable sharing, helping people? It just became a freeing experience. When Trouble Finds You, when it was done and I saw the completed manuscript, I was like, wow. It really put into context to me, for me, the struggles of life, how much I had really overcome. Because, when you're just making it, when you're in survival mode, I'm glad I got through that, move on to the next thing, and you kind of move away from it. But just having it all laid out there, it was like, you've overcome a lot. It's good.
Toni, how do you balance the emotional toll of humanitarian work and the creative demands of being a writer?
You know what? I think the last part of your question probably centers around just the nature of the work that I do, everything around people and the complexities of dealing with people. And that can take a toll on you because I'm in the discipline that I'm in because I care about people. And I'll never forget sitting in, I want to say it was the undergraduate program, and I was declaring my major in human resources. And Dr. Osman, I'll never forget him, first day of class, he said, "How many of you are in here because you want to help people?"
Oh, me too.
Half the hands in the class went up, right? Both of mine could have went up because, as you can see, I'm centered around people. And he said, okay, well, you're in the wrong class. You need to be a social worker, okay? Because human resources is about the business of the organization and protecting it. And I'm like, what? I thought I was going to be able to help some people, right? So I got through that class. I learned a lot. It was a fundamental HR course. But then I started to doubt what I was majoring in. Because if he really feels like I belong in social work because I care so deeply about people, then I may need to rethink this whole human resources thing, right? Because I care about organizations. To me, there's a balance between the organization and its people. And I know today that organizations that really want to make a difference and they really want to change the world, you do that through people. And so in order to do that through people, you have to treat them with dignity and respect. You have to try to meet their needs, as much as you can as an employee. You have to make sure the culture is right, the environment is right. So very much so I belong in human resources, right? But Dr. Osman had me doubting myself, right? So I switched my major based on this guy's conversation, right? And I went into business, okay? Because I knew I didn't want to be a social worker, number one. I like to eat. And, sometimes the salaries that they were paying, was just, it was a lot just for a family of, 3 or 4 at the time. But I actually have an undergraduate degree in business because I listened to Dr. Osman. But what happened was, through the nature of the course, I still kept taking human resource courses. I still was attracted to the space. And my colleagues would come to me when they would be like, this, that, or the other. I'm like, what does the policy manual say? I mean, when I was at Motorola Solutions in Chicago, you could just come to me and I'll tell you what page to turn to, where it's at. If this manager is like losing their mind, or if they're doing something that's not right, or if you are doing something that doesn't make sense, or it doesn't line up with policy, I could tell you that. You need to go get the policy. I studied it that much, right? So even throughout my undergraduate degree and getting it in business or whatever, I started having conversations with executives at that point. And as I was pursuing the master's program, I'm like, okay, I need to get an MBA. And I had a conversation with a couple of people, and they said, right now what's going on in the working environment is whatever your functional degree is in, you need a different type of degree. Okay. And so then, Eugene, the light came on. It was like, okay, so even though I belong in human resources, despite how Dr. Osman has summed it up. And I will say that human resources has evolved, because when Dr. Osman was leading those courses and when he was practicing, it was personnel. So totally different type of work than we do today, kind of more tactical, not strategic, as strategic as we're doing it today. So I think totally different environments. But to make a long story short, I'm like, oh, this is good. So I need a functional degree in HR. I'm going to major in human resource management because, see, your friend over here does not like macroeconomics. She doesn't like economics, and math takes her like quite some time to process. So can you imagine me in an MBA program? Oh my
Oh
God,
man.
that was gonna be interesting. Now listen, I was gonna make it through because I
Okay.
made it through my algebra
Well, you
classes and,
persevere. Yeah.
and everything else. So I would have made it through. But having that conversation was perfect, and I'll wrap it up with this. It was the perfect thing for me, right? Because in HR, in order for us to effectively serve the business, we have to understand the business.
Okay.
We have to understand numbers. We have to understand how the business makes money. We have to understand if you have people out here behaving in ways you can actually get your company sued. That is all about the money. So in regards to your question, more so than a writer, my main discipline is in human resources. Now, I still do write. I have a book that's sitting there that's unpublished. It's been in the same 90% spot space now since I arrived at INL. It was 90% complete when I got there, and it's still in the same spot. I also have a workbook out for teens who might be struggling to help them identify when there may be times that they may get in trouble so they can put some supports in places in regards to that. I have some information in there to help them kind of define where they might want to go in college, how they're kind of made up, etc. So I had a curriculum design team help me at Roundtable Companies to develop this for the teenage population. So I still do write. I still have a number of books inside of me, which is why When Trouble Finds You is a trademark, because I don't want anybody else to use it.
No,
And
that's amazing.
probably if I continue to live, there's probably about 5 or 6 more books that will come out of that series.
Amazing. Amazing. I'm waiting.
Thank you.
How has your definition of impact changed over time?
Yeah.
Can you, as you've grown your platform and your audience, can you share any experiences?
Yeah. I think for me, impact has evolved a lot, right? Because when you're coming from a place of survival and trying to come out of poverty, trying to come out of hard times, for me, impact was making it to the next day, then the next week, then the next month, then getting, a multi-car family, which took several years into the marriage, and then buying a house. It took us 5 years to do that. So to me, those were kind of like impacts on our life and able to change and start to break, that cycle of poverty that I came from, right? But now to me, impact is more about how do you help the next generation of people? How do you help people see that no matter where they came from, no matter what their zip code was, no matter who their parents were, whether they're the worst parents on earth or the best parents, it doesn't matter. Whole lot of stuff goes on in the world, that. But my impact now is focusing on others. How can I help them? What does success look like for them? And there's this one story I'll tell you. I'll never forget. There was this lady who came to an organization that I was in. It's probably been 25 years ago now. And I had a group, we called ourselves the Women of Excellence.
Amazing.
And with that came mentoring and, coaching from me at the time. And we had a plan, a development plan. And, she said to me one day, I said, because you could tell she had a lot of potential, right? And I said, you know what? You should go back to school. And she was like, I don't need to go back to school. I make $40,000 a year. I love what I do. I'm like, how much money there is out there to be made? I said, you should go back to school. You have what it takes. Now, when I met her, Eugene, she did not even have a high school diploma. She did not have one, but she had 2 kids. And then shortly after that, by the time she finished her undergraduate degree, she probably had 5 or 6 kids at that time. But to make a long story short, she had not really even thought about it. But by her being a part of that Women of Excellence group, with us having our monthly coaching, and then I became a mentor. I'm still a mentor for her today.
Wow.
She now is a family nurse practitioner
Wow.
with her own business, making 5 or 6 times more than the $40,000 a year she was making when we first met. So to me, That's impact. It's how it's moved beyond me and my family, because, it was always a big thing for me to get my older kids through college. I made lots of sacrifices for that. My oldest has an undergraduate in community health education and a master's in public administration. My middle kid has a degree from Harper in Illinois in law enforcement and criminal justice. And I'm trying to get him to go back to pursue even more. He's in traffic and logistics today. But I'm proud of them. I'm proud of who they are. They're both doing amazing work. And this one last thing I'll tell you for real.
Let's go.
Is I'm big on back to school drives, because a lot of times when I went to school, on the first day of school, a lot of times I didn't really have what I needed unless I was with my grandparents. And part of that was my mother had 5 kids, and I told you my dad died when I was 7. So for the most part, it's her, right, trying to manage through. So I never really had whole outfits at the same time, like a pants, a shirt, and some shoes, because she used to have to switch off between, okay, I'll buy the boys' shoes this month, the girls get shoes that month, I have to buy the girls' pants and a shirt, and it switched off like that for a long time. So I'm really big on back to school things. And so it's so funny, my kids actually picked up on that, and I was talking to my son John at one point, and we're talking about back to school drives and what they're doing. He's like, Mom, every time there's a back to school drive at work or in the community, I go and buy a ton of Crayola crayons, because Mom, I hated those dollar store colors you used to buy for me. So he gives more than that, right? But he makes sure that when he goes to the store for back to school for elementary, he is buying Crayola crayons. So they need to be cutting him a royalty, because he won't buy any other. But, I also see my children giving, and my oldest kid leads foundations outside of New Orleans. She's a commissioner for the state. And, I'm proud of who they are now. Let's see what this 14-year-old man does as she grows. But giving back and helping others has been a big part of who I've become. I feel like God has blessed me with much. So whom is given much, much is required. So I will do my part as long as there's breath in me.
Amazing.
Thank you for having me today.
Amazing.
It was a pleasure. And
thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing your audience with me. And if anyone from your audience wants to reach out to me, they can feel free to do that. I have a Facebook page, When Trouble Finds You. They can send a message there. They can email me, trusteecarter@yahoo.com. I'm happy to continue the conversations, with them there. I'm always available for nonprofit speaking engagements, if there's something they want to talk about. I'm happy to stay engaged.
Thank you so much, Toni. One last question. Well, we've learned so much about impact, getting out of your circle and giving to others. Because your kids saw you give, now they also give. And they even want to do it better, because there were certain things during their life that they were like, well, I wish I could get it this quality. And that's amazing. If you could see your younger self, and you can speak to the audience, if you could see your younger self today, what advice would you tell them based on your life experiences?
I would say drown out the noise, which you kind of talked about earlier, because there's a lot of noise that is always going on around us. Honestly, I hate to admit this, but there are a lot of unkind folks in our world too. As many kind folks as there are just as many unkind folks. So I would tell people that you're going to run into people who are not going to have your best interests at heart. They're going to say mean things to you. When I was in junior high, because my name is Toni, I was Toni the Frosted Flakes guy. I was Miss Piggy because I was chubby. I mean, all the things that you would think your kids wouldn't be saying to others at school or within, they were being said to me every day. So that really weighed on my self-esteem. It really took it to the lowest spot that you can get. We already talked about what happened when I was 14, but knowing what I know now, looking in the rear view mirror, I would say, Toni, none of those young people around you are as important. Even when I got into my teen motherhood and their parents started, keeping them away from me, and I became, isolated a lot, A lot of them aren't doing as well as God has blessed me to do. Some of them, you're like, what? This is what you were trying to keep me away from? Oh my God. So just drown out all that, because you never can tell who people are going to become from when they're so young. People take, turns in life that can be for the good or for the bad. But I would say drown out all the noise, ignore people, find your people, find your circle. And it took me a long time to do that. But sometimes we think we need big crowds. We don't. We can do a lot with small. We can be small and we can be mighty.
Exactly.
We can have little and we can make impact. And that's what I would tell myself. Don't worry about what people say about you. And guess what? You're not going to be for everybody. Everybody's not going to like you. Everybody's not going to want to be with you. That's okay. As long as they respect you, keep it moving, change the world, do your part, and let them do whatever they want to do, because life has a way of bringing bad to you, just like it has a way of bringing good to you. I believe that 100%.
Amazing, Toni. I don't know about you, but I've been filled today. I've just had this urge to go out there and do more, build an impact. You never know who it's going to touch. And I like Toni's last words. I love them. She says, just to sum it up, respect everybody you meet, because you never know. You never know what they're going through. You never know what challenges they have. And down the line, they could be your source of strength. And to wrap it all up, have a good support system. It doesn't have to be a big crowd, but surround yourself with people who believe in you and people who lift you up. Toni, it's been a pleasure having you today.
My pleasure to
It's been
be
a pleasure
here.
having you today. To you who is watching, thank you so much for being here. I love you. Go out there and make an impact. This is the Red Book Podcast. Don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe. I'll catch you guys on the next episode. See ya. Thank you, Toni.
Bye-bye.